Welcome to Italy and a very special car. This is the Lamborghini Huracán Super Trofeo Omolagata, or STO. And we hear lots about people promising to have created race cars for the road, and this really is about as close as it's possible to get to that claim, because a substantial amount of this car has been taken from the Super Trofeo one-make racer. Now basically this is being presented by Lamborghini as a celebration of the Huracan as we get right to the end of natural aspiration and non-hybridized powertrains. And it's the Huracan has been turned up to 11, well actually at least 11. So we've got quite a lot of changes over the standard car. Most obvious is the fact that most of the structure that you're looking at is actually carbon fibre underneath. Well, actually most obvious is what's going on further back at the back of the car with this absolutely massive rear wing. Now, whereas the standard Huracán, the Huracán Performante used active aerodynamics, this one doesn't have that. This is a user adjustable rear wing. It's got 3 positions, and in its most aggressive position it's capable of creating up to 450 kilograms of aerodynamic downforce. It's obviously a huge amount. The other big difference is the arrival of these new Bridgestone tyres, which have been specially designed for the car. Bridgestone is a new tyre partner for Lamborghini when it comes to the ultra performance stuff, and these are what are called Potenza race tyres, which are effectively road legal semi-slick tyres which are designed for use on track, very aggressive use on track. You can get it with cup tyres, which are obviously more road biased, but if you want to get the full effect, then these are the ones that you will go for. One more detail that's really worth drawing out is the periscope on the back, which is helping to channel some of the air towards the engine. The engine itself is the existing V10 that we've seen in many applications. Obviously we've seen it in all of the Huracan applications, before that the Gallardo. 5.2 litres, 640 horsepower, which means it's at a bit of a power disadvantage when compared to cars like McLaren's 765 LT. Now, rather than top speed, Lamborghini say this car is all about lap performance, which means it's actually got a slightly lower top speed than the regular Huracan. But on a track, any track that doesn't involve consistent high-speed work, it is the fastest Huracan that you can get. And the other interesting thing about this car is it is not a limited production special, as cars in this part of the market tend to be. If you want this car and you can get your name down before the Huracan production ends, then you'll get one. Lamborghini says that it's already sold the first year's worth, which represents about 1,600 cars. So there are going to be a lot of these out here. The STO is basically a greatest hits compilation. It's rear-wheel drive, like the rear-wheel drive Evo was, but it also has rear-wheel steering, which is reckoned to improve the agility in slower corners, and it has been almost completely stripped out. There are no carpets. It's got rubberized mats instead, and the reason we're cruising around Vallelunga at a fairly modest pace is number one, because I'm not wearing a helmet, but number two, because when it goes over 4,500 RPM, it gets really loud, almost painfully so. It sounds glorious, I have to say. It's the V10 that we've seen in many other Huracans, in fact we've seen in all the Huracans, 5.2 litres and revs out to 8,500. And the big advantage that this V10 has when it comes to use on track is its linearity, because it does not have a huge amount of low down torque, which means that the car isn't struggling to work out how to put it through the back axle. It's got torque vectoring, it does have active rear steering, but you can take some pretty impressive liberties, certainly on a nice hot racetrack. In part that's because of the very sticky new tyres, the Bridgestone Potenza race tyres. Lamborghini admits that they're only going to be used by real hardcore buyers. Most people who get the car will go for the still fairly aggressive cup option. And these can generate huge grip, but more importantly, they don't just generate huge grip, they also have a much nicer transition than you would get on real slick tyres. And the reason I know that is by a happy coincidence. I was here in Vallelunga a few weeks ago and I got to briefly drive the Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, the actual one-make race car on slicks. And I have to say that although it was, as you would expect, faster and more viscerally exciting than this is, it certainly wasn't more fun at the limit. This is quite a playful car, and it's a car that doesn't feel snappy in a way that certain other cars in this part of the market have done. There you go. It's getting loud again. What else is new? The other one is the arrival of Ccr Brakes. So these are the Brembo Super Carbon Composite brakes. They're called the Motorsport grade, and people talk about the F1 connection. We've seen them on a few other cars. They were on the McLaren Senna. I think the Lotus Evija has them as well, and they are effectively tireless on track, or they seem to be. You can absolutely pound them and not suffer any consequences. There's even a little display which shows you the temperature of the discs and the fluid as you're going round, and even following a pro driver who was setting a fairly tasty pace I was trying to keep up with, I didn't actually manage to get the brake temperature out of green and into yellow. So I'm pretty confident you could subject them to huge abuse and they'll just take it. What else is new? The big change, the really big change, is the one that hangs on the back of the car. It's the wing, that colossal wing, which is not active. It's 3-stage adjustable, and when it's in its most aggressive stage, as it is here at Vallelunga, it's reckoned to be producing about a peak of 450 kilograms. Now that's going faster than you can go on the track here, but there is a really fast turn just after the start-finish. And I have to say that this car can take credibility-threatening levels of speed through that turn. But unlike lots of cars that have got substantial amounts of aero, you don't have the sense of the car being forced into the ground at speed. The steering doesn't get heavier. You just really have to build up trust that it's there. I also drove a prototype version of this car last year at Nardo, and there have been quite a few changes since, other than the fact this one obviously isn't wearing a disguise. The biggest one is to the way the brake pedal feels. The car at Nardo, the brake pedal felt really much too soft. Well, much too soft for my tastes. It's firmer now, and it basically is set up to give a small amount of movement, but mostly it alters based on pressure. So it moves a little bit and then it firms up. You get used to it, and I have to say it does feel pretty natural. The rear steering feels slightly odder. You feel its effect in slower corners, especially in the Trofeo mode, if you're pushing to the edge of what the tyres can give you. When you think that the car is about to slide, and when it's giving all the signals that it's about to slide, then suddenly it isn't, and you get that sense it's almost as if the car's applying opposite lock itself. Apparently that is a combination of the torque vectoring and also the fact that it will be tweaking the rear steering a little bit as well. You get used to it, and as with other fast Huracans, the thing that you've got to learn to do is not react too strongly when that starts to happen, because if you do, you second guess the system and it gets quite scrappy. Whereas if you just basically try to keep the steering pointing where you want to go and keep the accelerator pedal where you want it, the car basically sorts itself out. You know, that might not sound like much fun, but it actually works really well. And it does mean that you can lean on the car very hard and basically trust it not to spit you off. And one of the interesting things at Vallelunga is realizing just how much throttle the car will take without any obvious traction or stability intervention. That really is the thing that feels most different about it compared to some of the turbocharged alternatives. Interestingly, Lamborghini admits that the car is not going to be as fast on a fast track as some of the more powerful turbocharged alternatives. Fairly obviously, I mean, it is giving away more than 100 horsepower to the McLaren 765 LT, to name but one. And that means that, interestingly, Lamborghini say that they're not planning to try and break the Nordschleife record with this car. That's what they say. They might change their mind, because obviously the Performante was a record holder in its own time. But they do claim that if you are on any track that does not require consistent speeds of over 300 kilometers an hour, 186 miles an hour, that this will be faster than any other road legal car that they have produced so far.
Thanks to our correspondent Mike Duff for this first drive of the Huracán STO, and that's a car that we hope to get in the UK for a full road and track test later in the year. Now, if you subscribe to the channel, you won't miss it when that happens, or in fact, any other autocar video. We have regular uploads here, or you can find us at autocar.co.uk, and the magazine is in all good newsagents every week since 1895. Thanks for joining us on the channel. See you next time.